You can't hear me. Good afternoon,
Hi,
everyone.
Becky.
Hello. You're most welcome.
Thank you.
Yes. I was just saying hello, Nikolai, Bridget, Rachel, Shalom, Barbara, Allen, and Solomon.
Hi.
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 Let's just give ourselves 5 more minutes. See if more people can log on. I know that a lot of people are struggling in Uganda because social media has been switched off, but that's okay. We should hopefully we'll record the session and be able to post it on our channels so people can view it after. So we should be able to start in 5 minutes as we wait for more people.
Okay.
Forget that I told the other two, but I went here. The world meaning owulira sinaaba I'm trying to connect.
So we'll be starting in about 3 minutes. I know that a lot of people are struggling to get in because social media is off, so it's difficult when you're trying to find the link in your email when you're used to find it on your WhatsApp channel or Twitter. So we'll just give everybody a few more minutes so we can admit more people and then we shall kick off. Otherwise, thank you so much for making it early. At 10 past midday, we'll be kicking off West African time. So once again, I welcome everybody to this today's session. We're going to be looking at the topic, the out of poverty algorithm. My name is Rebekah Kabugo Mugisha. I am co-founder and CEO of Malaika Path. I'll just give a brief of what Malaika Path does and what today is about and why we're doing what we're doing today.
Rebecca, sorry, I have some black squares on my screen. Something wrong.
Something wrong on your screen?
Yes, some black squares on your slides.
Oh, can you see everything now?
Not everything, just, well, better, but not everything.
Okay, I've taken them off. It was my view of everybody in the meeting, but can you see? Is it a better view now?
Yes.
Can you see
yes,
the presentation?
At least I can see content.
Yes, you can see content. Okay, I'll just move
Thank
it on
you.
the side. I just wanted to see who's in the room. So a brief background about the different organizations that are taking part in the session for today. Some of you might be wondering, what is World Logic Day, who is Malaika Path, and who is Hive Collabo? So World Logic Day is an international day proclaimed by UNESCO in association with International Council for Philosophy and Human Sciences. And it started in 2019. It's been celebrated 3 times now. This is the 3rd time it's going to be celebrated. And it happens every 14th of January. And usually there are about 33 countries that take part and over 60 events across the world. And today we are delighted and excited to be part of that event. We're not in this alone. We partnered with Hive Collabo. So a brief about Hive Collabo. I know that some of the people in Hive Collabo are listening in today. Hive Collabo is an open community-owned co-working hub for young tech entrepreneurs in Uganda, and they give digital entrepreneurs access to space, an environment that has access to internet, and you can hold your events or just go there with your laptop and be able to work and do a startup in the environment. And about Malaika Path, an organization which I co-founded and where I work as director and CEO. Malaika Path is a literacy organization. What do I mean by literacy? Many times when we speak of literacy, people think about only writing and reading and maybe arithmetics. Literacy, in the way that we view it, is using knowledge or awareness or any basic or literacy in any sort of field or area that will help people move from one place to another. In our case, our burden is for sub-Saharan Africa. And as an organization, we seek opportunities to coach, to mentor, to teach, to speak, to have training workshops and all sorts of engagements where we can help people gain certain information in a certain field so they can move from one point to another. Some of the modules that we focus on literacy in personal awareness, being able to understand who you are, literacy in finances, understanding financial literacy in the digital space and emerging technology, what's happening in the marketplace right now or in the world, and how you can tap into that to affect your future, and literacy in areas like customer experience and leadership. So briefly, that's it about the three organizations that are taking part in the session that I'm going to talk about today. So as you saw on the previous slide, the topic is simply the out of poverty algorithm. My slides are not moving. I don't know why, just excuse me. I'll just stop sharing and share again. But please do stay with me. Yeah, so the topic, I don't know why it's hanging.
Do you use PowerPoint?
Yes, it's in PowerPoint, Nicolay.
It will be much better to convert to PDF or just not share, not just full screen, just regular PowerPoint mode. In this case, you will be able to manage.
Okay, that's
Try.
right.
It will be okay.
Let me try that. Thank you. Let me just try that. I think I have it right here. I hope it will be very clear for everybody though. Okay, so for now, we'll just roll like that. Are you able to see everything clearly though? I would imagine it's...
Yes.
I'll make it a bit bigger.
It is visible, it is understandable, don't worry.
Thank you. Thanks a lot. Yeah. So that's it about Malaika Path, and about Hive Collabo, and about what World Logic Day is about. So I'd like us to go through a case for Sub-Saharan Africa. Like I said, as Malaika Path, we have a burden for Sub-Saharan Africa. Why? Because you and I, most people in this room, live in Sub-Saharan Africa. And Sub-Saharan Africa is a space that's made up of 33 countries in the region. We have 1.2 billion people as we speak, as at end of 2019 statistics. So we must be slightly above that. And if you've heard or if you've seen World Bank statistics, you will know that it's projected that by 2050, the biggest bulk of the population in Sub-Saharan Africa will be below 25 years of age, meaning that most of the people in these nations are youth, and more youth. It has its advantages, but it also has opportunities and threats depending on how we look at that. The other thing that I would like the audience to know is that in this part of the world, only 25% have access to internet. So if you have internet access either in the place where you work or you have a smartphone that can access internet for you to access different opportunities, just know that you're among the 25% of that 1.2 billion population. The other statistics about sub-Saharan Africa is that 41% live below the poverty line. And you might ask me, what does that mean? How does it even affect me? What that means is that 41% live below $1 point something a day. And you might ask yourself that, well, perhaps you don't live below $1 per day, but you might have somebody in your circles of influence. You might have a father, an auntie, an uncle who lives very far from you, and actually has to be part of your expense sheet on a monthly basis. Why? Because they're among the 41% that live below the poverty line in this part of the world. And later on, we will see what that means in terms of looking at an algorithm. When I talk about an algorithm in this set, we'll see what an algorithm means. We're talking about the mindset, like how do we find ourselves in that sort of experience as citizens in sub-Saharan Africa. The other statistic about this area is that 27 of the world's poorest 28 countries are in this part of the world, and only 47% have access to electricity. These numbers are as of 2019. You can check them out from the World Bank page. And the reason why I wanted to bring this bigger picture to the mind is that you and I, or the bulk of the people in this room today, live in this part of the world, and this sort of defines our experience. If it doesn't define our experience, it defines our ability to excel in different areas when you compare us to the world over, when you compare us to developed countries or developing nations, because we are in the least developing countries. And these are some of the stats that define our experience. But I would like us to look at there's so many statistics that define Sub-Saharan Africa, but today I would like us to focus on something called GDP per capita. It's something that we can use to sort of like imagine what different people in different parts of the world experience when it comes to access to infrastructure, access to benefits in their world, access to employment, access to so many other things that would improve the standard of living. So we're going to look at the next slide that looks at GDP per capita. It's the only thing that I've pulled out on that slide that of the different statistics of sub-Saharan Africa. So GDP per capita simply stands for gross domestic produce per capita. It looks at every single person, the entire population. For example, when I look at sub-Saharan Africa, I said we are 1.3 billion in terms of our population. So it simply looks at everything that the country has produced in terms of incomes in that period and divides it by the population. So when you divide it by the population, I'm going to try and make this as simplistic as possible, because I would like us to enjoy the understanding, or to enjoy what it is that I'm trying to drive to. So when you look at similar countries and how they rank, or similar regions, when you look at North America, for instance, and I'll break that down later in terms of what it means, you'll find that their GDP per capita is $63,000. I'll break that down to what it means to an individual. It goes down further when you look at countries in the Organization for Economic and Cooperation Development. There are about 37 countries in that region. Some of them belong in Europe, others in America, others in the Pacific. Their GDP per capita is $39,000. Then you come down all the way and come down to European Union, East Asia and Pacific, the world, Latin America, South Asia, and finally our sub-Saharan Africa, which I said earlier on that we have a population of 1.3 billion. Our GDP per capita is $1,585,000 as of 2019. But look at how the rest of the world fares in this space. We have, let me just pick out the first two. The guys in North America, their GDP per capita is $63,000. What does that mean to me as an individual? What does that mean to you as an individual? What it means is that when you get all the population, for example, in America, and you look at all their produce, the things that they have sold out to the international market, and the work that they've produced with their intellect, the incomes that they get, they add that all together, of course, and they net off imports. What it means that when they divide the population per person in North America, it means that on an annual basis, when they divide on average the amount of money that they make in terms of income as a nation, on an annual basis per person, $63,000 is attached to a head, to a person, and this includes children. Of course, it's an average, meaning that some of the money may belong to a few people, and some of the money may and less money may belong to the bulk of the population. But on average, if they were to spread out their entire incomes or whatever they've gotten as a nation in terms of money coming in from different things, from, like I said, from their intellect, from their services offered, from their produce, from their capital that has been invested, is that they can attach $63,000 to a head. And what's the story for Sub-Saharan Africa? We can only attach $1,585 US dollars per head. That's about $1,000, about 3.7 Uganda million shillings. So we add $500. Maybe that's about 5 point something million, and that is annually. So when you get that money and divide it into 12 months, we come to about maybe $380 per month. In Uganda shillings, about 500K per month. Okay, but that is for 1.3 billion population on average. When you look at the differences in our GDP per capita to the people in different parts of the world, you can clearly tell that their experience as citizens in those nations is way different from your experience. Because what does it mean to have money in your pocket? It means you can access different opportunities that money can actually get you to. But the other interesting factor that I found out, even as I looked at these numbers, and I'll take the case of the OECD members, that stands for Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development. What happened is that that particular region, I like that particular region. Why? Because they did an intensive research. That organization was formed after the World War II. It has 37 member countries, and they have a deliberate effort to understand what does it mean for different countries to have different GDP per capita? Why can't our country have more than the other country? Why can this country have more than the other country? What brings about those differences in those different nations? And I listed some of the things that one of their papers talked about that are contributors to GDP per capita. I know some of you love economics and you probably come across these terms, but I listed them here because there's some that I'm particularly interested in that we're going to scale down in our mindsets to individuals and to households. Today we are not talking to government, so we will not go into government space. Maybe some of you have a chance to influence policy at government level, but I'd like us to get this understanding of whatever it is that I'm talking about to the level of households and to the level of individuals. So when they did research to find out what are some of the things that differentiate GDP per capita in different countries, and they came up with that organization. Why? Because they needed, it was after World War II and a lot had happened in terms of the economic space, and they needed to reconstruct themselves and come back to the level of their desire. And some of the things that they found were contributors to GDP per capita and influenced the differences in different countries were: one, the rate of investment in the total economy; two, the number of years of schooling of the population aged between 25 to 64. I'll talk about that very deeply later on when we come into algorithms or algorithmic mindsets that affect the difference in our... Hello, I'm hearing some noises in the background. Are we having trouble viewing the screen? Okay, so this particular paper found out these contributors to their GDP per capita, which is gross domestic produce per individual in this particular region. The other thing that influences their GDP per capita was the growth rate of the population, meaning that if I'm in sub-Saharan Africa and somebody is saying that by 2050 we're going to be the country, the area in the world that grows the most, apparently it's anticipated that by 2050 our population in SSA will have doubled to 2.6. Right now we are 1.3. So you're going to ask yourself, is our population growing at the same rate at our investment rate, or is our population growing at the same rate as our expertise is growing as individuals, or is our population growing at the same rate as the rate of technology, because technology helps you advance in terms of economy and in terms of even your own wallet share as an individual. The other thing that they looked at was physical capital, what is accessible in those countries in terms of resources, natural resources. Do they have land? Do they have minerals? Do they have lakes that are full of fish that they can, manipulate and sell at a given point? So in a layman's understanding, and why I wanted to bring out this slide is just so as we can understand that even countries that have the highest GDP per capita have an intentional path. They have people that are looking at those elements that we're looking at a global level, at a country level, to say that, if our population is growing at this rate, perhaps we must invest in people to be able to skilled at this rate if you're going to be able to keep at a certain level in terms of GDP per capita 2 years down the road, 5 years down the road, 20 years down the road. But what does that mean for you? What does that mean for me? What does that mean for us who live in this part of the world where perhaps, I don't know if anybody is studying these things for us to say that, after this war, after the other war, guess what? There's a particular part of the population that's looking at our economic geography and they're looking at the rate of investment in this nation, and they're deliberately shouting to all of us to make sure that even after we leave university, we're actually reskilling ourselves to make sure that we are relevant in terms of the marketplace or the workplace, and we can gain more in terms of our wallet share. So I wanted you to look at the bigger picture and these big numbers, and just for you to understand that it's interesting to find that there are actually regions that are very intentional about the path. I'll call it a path. Later on, when we describe what an algorithm is, about the logic that goes into making sure that their countries stay at the top when it comes to gross domestic produce per person in those different areas. And these are some of the inputs. Okay, so now let's go to that scientific word or interesting word called algorithm. I'm sure that when some of you saw it, you're probably wondering, what is an algorithm? So what does an algorithm mean? And what does this word have to do with me? I don't want you to worry about what this word means. I don't even want you to worry about how it sounds. But it's one of the latest trends when you look at emerging technology. We cannot run away from algorithms. Why? When you look at the era in which we are, again, I won't say much about that today, but we're in an era called the fourth industrial revolution. The world goes through different revolutions in different times. Right now, when you look at the space in which we are, we're in the fourth industrial revolution. What that means is that there's a lot of emerging technology to shape or to sieve or to define how the marketplace is. By the marketplace, if I was to say it in Luganda, akatali. By marketplace, I mean that you and I are some form of stock. I'll call that human stock. Why? Because you go to a workplace, you deliver your abilities, your skills, your knowledge in exchange for a salary. So you're looked at as human stock. Today we're going to look at you as human stock. So there's so much in terms of emerging technology that is shaping the marketplace. And if we don't understand it, we might find that it will sieve us out. And one of the things that you'll see about those nations that I told you about, one of the things that they invest in very heavily or understand very heavily is a rate of technology, understanding how technology is evolving and what that means for their people and what that means for the skills that are in the marketplace and what investment is going into that area to make sure that the people that are going out into the marketplace to produce or to make sense of the capital that they have in these places is actually understanding the rate and the evolution of technology so that they are relevant and they have impact and as the rest goes. So what is an algorithm? We've looked at Sub-Saharan Africa, we've looked at different countries and what their GDP per capita is, but most importantly, what the inputs are to determine their GDP per capita and how Sub-Saharan Africa, a place that you and me live, is way below the radar when you look at their numbers. But now I want to understand what an algorithm means, and then we shall scale all that information down to you and myself and the household. How do we use this term? How do we understand this term? How do we understand this mindset to make sure that we're getting ahead when it comes to poverty? We've seen it global level, regional level. We know what that means for national level, but want to come down to our household and individual. But first, let's understand what an algorithm is. So an algorithm is simply a set of rules or a set of inputs or a set of contributions. I try to put so many words there so that you're all comfortable with the word algorithm. It is simply a set of rules that's put in a computer program or computer language to make sure that it has a certain outcome. But for today, we're not going to look at the word algorithm in terms of computer language. We're going to look at the word algorithm in terms of mindset. The reason why I like that word so much is because when you determine, if you remember those times when our math teachers taught us algebra, remember A plus B is equal to AB? That is a simply or a basic understanding of an algorithm. It is simply a path of logic, meaning that when you determine an input, automatically you'll see the outcome. It's not something that you stagger into or something that you close your eyes and say, you know what, I want AB as an output, and then voila, I open my eyes and I see AB. No, algorithm takes you to a place where you know that when you put A plus B next to each other, guess what? The outcome will be A and B. So today when we look at algorithms, and I've tried to put out certain logs in different aspects of financial wellness that will define an algorithm for that part of life, I don't want us to look at it as scientific form, but I want us to look at the mindset behind algorithms. When somebody gets into a computer and they say that, make sure this computer, for you to have security access, simply ask it for a login and a password. That's an algorithm embedded in that computer, embedded in the software when you come into an organization. So the first page when you log onto your computer will ask you for a password, will ask you for a login. Once you put it in, it gives you access. So that's a security feature that is embedded in the mindset of an algorithm. But today I would like us to think about algorithm in terms of our mindset and how we approach the subject of money. And that is why I gave you that introduction of how we look at different countries and their GDP per capita, and you'll see that there are different bodies and different organizations in these parts of the world where they look at their economy with an algorithmic mindset, meaning that they will know that if our population rate is this, our rate of investment is this, our rate of technology evolution is this, our physical assets are this, our human stock is growing in this manner, guess what? We can determine what the outcome is 1 year down the road, 2 years down the road, 3 years down the road, 5 years down the road. And today I would like us to look at that mindset in terms of how we look at our household income, but also how we look at our individual income. So breaking down the word algorithm even further, you can see some images on the screen sorry, the word text is probably disturbing you, but you can see some images on the screen where there's a box. It has a book inside. When you open the book, you will find the box, you'll find the book, and that's an outcome. So other words, to break down what algorithm means, as we can see, it can mean inputs, it can mean inputs that lead to outcomes, contributions that lead to results, efforts that lead to consequences, determinations that lead to an output, labors that lead to effects, involvement that leads to an aftermath. So even as we go through this whole presentation, I'd like you to think about algorithms in that manner, that how do I have an algorithmic mindset in understanding the size of my wallet today, the size of my wallet tomorrow, the size of my household wallet 5 years down the road. And that is what financial wellness is about. When you look at so many benchmarks of the wealthiest people in the world, even the guys that have not, I like to give an example of my friends down in Kabugo, some of whom have made it so well in the area of money. When you research about their lives, you will find that they have a methodical approach in how they look at their money and how they've been able to sustain it beyond so many years. So that's what an algorithm means, simply a logical path or an equation or a law whereby you know that input is X, output will be X. But if input is X plus X, output will be XX. So we're going to look at different elements of financial wellness and how we can look at them through the path of algorithms or through the path of logic. In this case, the mindset. Let me try and do full screen. Hopefully it will move and not disturb me because it has a better view. So first and foremost, we're going to look at the value algorithm. We're going to look at the value algorithm, and the reason why I would like you to look at the value algorithm is because one of the key determinants of how big or how wide or how high the size of a wallet is simply the value that you're bringing into the marketplace. What do I mean by value? When we go back to this slide, like I said, I have very keen interest in some of the inputs for these regions in the world and why their GDP per capita is so much higher than Sub-Saharan Africa, a place that I love very much, a place that I live. I want you to look at this input here in one of the researches that they did. The average number of years of schooling of the population aged between 25 to 64 years of age, which they look at as human stock or human capital. A lot of us, when we leave university, we look at it like, you know what, I did social sciences at university, and probably that's enough to get me a job. Guess what? When you look at emerging trends and why some people have more money than us in their wallets, it's because they're spending much more than just their basic education at university to understand the marketplace or to go into the marketplace or to offer value in the marketplace. But even before we go into value, I would like you guys to do a very, very teeny weeny exercise. And I hope you have a book next to you. And I hope some of you can share in the chat after, before we go into the value algorithm. Like I said, it looks at schooling, human stock. You and I are part of human stock. When somebody is looking at the value that their country has in terms of attracting money, attracting incomes from all sorts of people, they look at the quality of their human stock. And human stock in this particular paper that I would like to focus on looked at the schooling or how much you're investing into your skills, your abilities, your knowledge between the ages of 25 to 64, because that defines the time of your working age group. In Uganda, we define working age group between 16 to 65 years of age, but for the sake of this presentation, let's look at 25 to 64. You realize that's after university. So how much have you invested in your value, increasing your value in terms of your abilities, your skill set, your knowledge in the area of your expertise between the ages of 25 to 64? So kindly do a very, very teeny weeny exercise with me. Just get a piece of paper. You don't have to share this, but I want you to get a certain light bulb, and I hope that you do. Look at the amount. If you are self-employed or if you are employed, look at the amount of money that you earn on a monthly basis and write it down on the paper. Just write it down on a piece of paper. your monthly salary. For my presentation, I'll put 500,000 on mine. I hope that you're with me. So you've written down the amount of money you get per month. Okay, we're going to assume that you work for 22 days in a month. Okay, so write down 22 days in a month. Kindly do this exercise with me. It's important for what I'd like to communicate to happen. So if you do your amount of money you get per month divided by 22 days, you will realize that the figure that you get is the amount, is your value per day. Okay, I know some of you have heard of this before, some of you have not. But it's okay. Over communication on something important is better than no communication at all. So the amount that you get after that is the amount of money you get, is your value per day in terms of what you attract in terms of an income. Now, what I'd like you to do is to get that value. Please put your hand up if you're following. You know, when you're having a virtual meeting, sometimes it feels as if you're speaking to yourself. So now that we have value per day, great. I have two participants whose hands are raised, so you're with me. Now I'd like you to get that figure, okay, and divide it by 8 hours because it's per day, because we work for 8 hours in a day, right? Divide that figure by 8 hours. I'm doing my division for mine. Divide it by 8 hours. That is your value per hour. Kindly raise your hand if you have your value per hour. I can see some hands raised. Very good. Very, very good. That's your value per hour. Now we're going to take it to a minute. How many minutes are in an hour? We have 60 minutes in an hour. So divided by 60. Anyone divided it? Divided by 60. That is your value per minute. In other words, that is what your knowledge, your abilities, your expertise is able to attract in terms of value per minute. But of course, there are exceptions to this rule. You might be having so many assets and they have nothing to do with your monthly income. So in your free time, you can actually divide your assets and divide them into derive what value they bring you in terms of per minute. If you're able to articulate their rate of investment, their rate of return, you can just do the same methodology and see how much your value attracts per minute. So you can do the same to your assets, you can do the same, but now we're talking about you as a person in terms of income spend. And if we just go back to those countries that I told you about, I'm sure right now you have your value per minute. I want somebody to put just one word on how that makes you feel in the chat. How does that make you feel in the chat? How does your value per minute make you feel? Just one word. Or you can put an emoji. You can put an emoji in there. So the reason why that staggers me very, very much is because, like I said earlier, we find regions like that particular region. I read a paper on it, Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development. There's 37 countries in that region, and they're very intentional and deliberate about making sure that their GDP per capita is at a certain level, and they can predict it 5 years down the road, 10 years down the road. Why? Because they're intentional. And they've looked at some of the inputs that determine the differences between different countries when it comes to GDP per capita. And one of the inputs that I would like you guys never to forget for yourself. Why? Because, like I said, today we're not speaking to governments, we're speaking to households, we're speaking to individuals. And one of the inputs that I would like you not to forget is the one where I'm putting my cursor right now. The average number of years of schooling of the population aged 25 to 64 years old. And they look at that as human stock. So you and I in the marketplace are simply stock in terms of human form. So you need to ask yourself, how much value am I bringing to the marketplace as human stock? How much value am I bringing to the marketplace as human stock? What is my value per minute? You've just seen your value per minute. If you go into those countries that we have talked about, for instance, and we look at their value per minute and just deriving it from their GDP per capita, we might even get sadder. But also, it's very interesting to know that by the time they arrive at their value per minute, it's because they've understood that once you're in the marketplace, schooling and studying does not end there. you must, so I put an algorithm here. Again, these are logs for basic understanding. They're not scientific in any way. I don't want a data scientist in this room to shoot me down, because I know that they have different logs for coming up with algorithmic equations. This is very basic. If you look at that algorithm up there, or that equation up there, to say that, how do I create value for myself as an individual? One, you look at basic education, which is not enough. You have to add it to lifelong learning. So there's a new term in this era called lifelong learning, to say that, for instance, if I love flowers so much and I'm into gardening, then perhaps I need to benchmark in the world and see what the best gardeners in the world are studying, and what unions, govern the best gardeners in the world. And as I subscribe to those unions, and then I'll understand what are the emerging trends in gardening, and then I'll become an expert in that area. Why? Because I will be merging my basic education, maybe in forestry or in agriculture, to my passion and hobby, which is gardening, and finding out, how do I become a certified gardener, and how do I make sure that I understand the trends when it comes to flowers and gardening and all those things, and then I can be an authority, or I can be a master at gardening. So value creation is much, much more than what I studied at university. I told you I studied social sciences. So if you add your basic education, and we're going to leave that at your degree or diploma, then you put lifelong learning, meaning that you have to continue learning in your area of expertise or in your area of talent. And there's so many resources out there in the world. Some of them are free, some of them are paid, but you must be able to hone your skills and hone your understanding in a particular area, because trends keep emerging, trends keep shifting, trends keep evolving depending on the demand and supply. Everything in the world, by the way, is about demand and supply. So if you come out as an expert in an area, why? You know what happens? What happens is that demand for your skill set will increase. Why? Because you have sort of like gotten yourself out of the masses, out of the sameness of everybody else, and shifted your expertise by adding value to it. The other thing that I added there is experience. So you have basic education, you've added your lifelong learning, you've added your experience, you've added your achievements, and those are simply inputs. Remember what you said about algorithm? Algorithm is simply an equation that has inputs and outcomes. We've seen different countries and why their GDP per capita is much higher than us in sub-Saharan Africa. And we see that they're deliberate about certain inputs. And one of the inputs that I would like us to go with today, we've just calculated your value per minute. I understand that somebody like Usain Bolt, there's a year, I think in 2016, where Usain Bolt made $30 million in 3 minutes.
Rebekah, sorry.
May I ask a question? Nicolai, can you please do the question after, I beg you, because I have 1 hour.
Okay, it's okay.
I kindly request, yes.
Basically,
we can
thank you.
Yeah, we can discuss after. Don't worry, we'll have an open flow, because I have a bit more slides and I have an hour. So like I said earlier, if you're going to look at the basic understanding of value creation and understand that actually value, or becoming an expert in your area, or creating value and impact in the market space, is much, much more than going to school and getting into your first job. You must be deliberate and intentional about those things that you love. Personally, I'm a believer in the things that you're passionate about, or the things that you can do with your eyes closed. Become an expert in that area and subscribe to unions or organizations that show emerging trends in that particular field, but also find out what more you can study to make sure that you become an expert, an authority, a master in that area, and check the application of what you're studying by making sure that you have I like to call it a brag sheet, or list down your achievements in that particular area, and then be able to create more impact and more value and more achievements, and see what that does to your wallet size or your value per minute, even as you move forward, because money follows value in the marketplace. So you need to hone that skill so that you guard your value very jealously in that particular area of expertise. Everywhere you go, whatever it is, just be a master at it, and not just don't be average at that sort of value creation. So if you were to put this understanding, or this into an equation, into a law that brings you a particular outcome, like I said, I've put for you a basic logical path right there: basic education, lifelong learning, experience, and achievements, of course, and benchmarks with different people that we look up to in terms of this area of expertise. Let's go to another key element in financial wellness, and that is the element of saving, and more saving. Okay. I like the full screen, but it keeps freezing. So don't worry if I keep going in and out to bring you the full screen. So if we're to look at the savings algorithm, and I'm sure many of you could have attended financial literacy classes. Some of you have, maybe some of you have not. We know that one of the key elements in wealth creation is just having the ability to put money away for a while consistently, and that money will definitely grow. I like a particular story. A friend of mine told me that one of the ways that their fathers taught them about saving, and saving is magical. It's not the end, it's not the end in itself, but it is magical. So a friend of mine told me that the way that their father taught them about saving, and this can never leave, it never ages for me, is that once upon a time they got a 5-liter jerry can, an empty 5-liter jerry can, and they put it below a tap of running water. But instead of opening it fully, what they did was to make sure that it's just giving a drop per time, a drop per time, a drop per time, and they came back after 24 hours. You can guess what was in that jerry can after 24 hours. The jerry can was full, and that's what saving is like. That for as long as you're putting away money consistently over a period of time, that money will definitely grow. That money will definitely grow. After we talk about the next algorithm, I'll just put up a certain Excel sheet just to show you the magic of saving and the magic of investment. But if you're to look at an equation that looks at savings, again, this is very basic. It's not in any way scientific. It's very basic. But if you have you have an amount and you put it away regularly, consistently, that equals savings. As simple as that. And we'll share a case or a story of a particular gen. I have the Excel sheet here later on, so you can see what happens with saving. But if I put away money, even if it's 1,000 shillings per day, if I put away 1,000 shillings per day, guess what? I'll have 30,000 shillings at the end of the month. If I put away 30,000 shillings for 12 months, at the end of 12 months, guess what? 12 times 3, I'll have 3.6. Is that 3.6? 360, sorry, 360,000 shillings at the end of the year. So what happens if I'm able to scale that up in terms of amount, scale that up in terms of time, and voila, there you are, as simple as ABC. So you can't say that I need X amount of money at the end of the year. I need 360,000 shillings at the end of the year. I'm talking about amounts that are very small in our minds, so that you can see how achievable this is. So if I wanted 360,000 shillings at the end of the year, perhaps all I need to do is to put away 30,000 shillings on a monthly basis. But the magic about saving is that we need to look at it across a timeline. And sometimes we get very discouraged about saving because we are thinking, I need this money now, or I can't put away enough that will give me what I want at the end of the year. But even if it's 1,000 shillings that you think put away on a monthly basis, you will find 12,000 shillings locked up, in a wallet somewhere at the end of the year. So again, the magic about the input or the effort or the involvement or the participation or the side of input to get your outcome of saving is that you need to respect the issue of time, and you need to respect consistency, and you need to determine an amount that won't make you feel like you want to get that money out every single time you have a problem. Why? Because savings will open a door for you to explore all other elements of financial well-being. Okay. Oh, there it goes again. Sorry. I know Nicolai told me to share it differently. It looks better when it's a full screen. Kindly bear with me. So the next thing I'd like us to look at is the investment equation or the investment law or the investment algorithm. Again, for all algorithms, there's an input and an outcome. For all areas of logic, there's an input and an outcome. So now that we've known that if I'm going to save, I must respect an amount, I must respect a time period, a timeline, and I must also respect consistency. Whether you like it or not, you'll find the jerry can full. Whether you like it or not, you will find that money at the end of that given period has moved from some point A to a point X. So now let's look at the equation or the algorithm or the law for investment. You can see that on the side of input, we have different things right there, and then we have an outcome. The beauty about investment is that then, while your savings will give you exactly what you have put in for a given period, what investment will do, it will multiply those savings. But before we go to multiplying those savings, I know it might sound exciting to multiply savings. Before we go there, I would like you to look at certain things or certain elements before it's multiplied. So again, basic law or basic equation is we have an asset class right here where you see A, and that asset class has to be put into something we called risk and return. You must be able to assess the risk and return Okay. And then you can be able to assess the risk and return, be able to leverage, to understand what leverage means, and then be able to give it a time or look at it across a timeline. And then you can enjoy multiplied savings. But I don't want to rush through this because it's something that I would love for us to fundamentally get away from investment. Because I know many different people have thoughts about, okay, now that I'm saving, so I have my 360,000 at the end of the year, I have my 3 million at the end of the year, I have my 12 million at the end of the year, and now you're saying that to multiply that saving, I must subject that amount to the logic or to the equation of investment. One of the key elements of investment that has blessed my heart in terms of understanding and awareness and knowledge is the fact that you must stress your investment choice through what they call risk and return, so that you're sure that you're leveraging and not losing. And how do you do that? Let's first talk about asset classes. Asset classes can be anything. You can decide to choose fixed deposits. And again, fixed deposits should not scare us. It's simply you can choose to put your savings on an account with a bank that brings you a return annually. If a bank says that we shall give you a return of 10%, 14%, you'll be able to describe exactly what you will get at the end of that year. Or you can decide to put your money in securities. What are securities? You can decide to buy shares in different organizations. You do some homework about them and decide that, you know what, maybe Stanbic is selling a share at 27 shillings. And maybe Stanbic, their vision and the goal, you have the comfort that it will be here 30 years down the road, 100 years down the road. So you buy shares and see how they'll multiply your X amount of money to become X and X. Or you can put your money in a business. It could be an agribusiness. It could be produce. It could be, hard goods, whichever it is that you choose, or you can choose to have real estate. So how do you look at your asset of your choice and subject it or stress it through a risk and return curve? There's something on the picture here. I hope that it's clear for everyone. It has an X and Y axis, invest something over time. But what I'd like you to know is that the higher the risk, the higher the return, and the lower the risk, the lower the return, just for you to understand what I mean by risk and return. And I'll give an example. If I decided to put 1 million shillings in a bank account today that says that, Becky, we shall give you 10% return in this bank account at the end of the year. What that means is that if I put my 1 million shillings at that account, I will find that it has grown by 100,000. So I'll have 1,100,000, and that's just 10% return. But then a friend of mine could be so good in retail and tell me, you know what, we can actually go to China, and for that 1 million shillings, you'll bring back stock, maybe in terms of children's clothes, and you'll be able to get a return of 100%, perhaps within the same given year. What that means is that my 1 million shillings will birth another 1 million shillings at the end of the year, and I will have 2 million at the end of the year instead of 1.1, or instead of the 1 million if I didn't subject it to investment. So in choosing which asset class, you'll ask yourself, what if I go with my friend to China and I bring that stock and nobody buys it? Perhaps you will, or nobody buys it, or they buy only half of it. Maybe the return will be 50% and not 100%. So instead of 1 million giving birth to 500,000, the 1 million will give birth to, to 1 million, it will give birth to 500,000, making it 1.5. Or somebody might say, you know what, at least I'm sure without a shadow of doubt that, you know what, if the bank says they'll give me a 10% return on this fixed deposit, it's a fact and it will happen. So that's how you choose where to put your savings, depending on the return. But one of the things you should know is that the higher the return, the higher the risk. You could actually get double the amount you've put in, but you could also lose the amount that you've put in. So what you do is study as much as possible, learn as much as possible about that investment class. But also there's something emerging these days in investment, which is called insurance. You could insure whatever it is that you're investing in to make sure that if you made losses in a particular area, maybe insurance can pay you back depending on what it is. Okay. If I had a shop maybe in Kabugo that's going to give me a return of 150%, perhaps I could insure my business and know that if I incurred losses, maybe because of a certain reason, A, B, C, D, can insurance cover this? And that's how sometimes you mitigate risk. But the beauty or the bulb moment about investment is just to understand that you must subject the asset class of your choice, where it is that you want to invest your money, into something called risk and return curve, and understanding that the higher the risk, the higher the return, the lower the risk, the lower the return. They both have advantages and disadvantages, and asking yourself whether you're actually leveraging by getting into that kind of a business or that kind of investment, and giving it the beauty or the understanding of time of a given period for you to get what you want. That's another algorithm of wealth. Okay. Okay, now I'd like us to do a very, very simple exercise. I'm going to put something up on the screen, but I'm going to first give you the scenario. It won't take more than 5 minutes. It covers what we've talked about, saving and investment. And in this case, I would like you to get a scenario of a 1 gen. Kindly write that down. A 1 gen who earns 20,000 shillings. Please don't get bored with numbers. We can't hack the money code unless we enjoy numbers to some level. They're not complex in any way. I just want you to move with me. So Jen earns 200,000 shillings on a monthly basis. If you have somewhere to write, if you have a computer, kindly move with me. And Jen decides to save 40% of this amount on a monthly basis. Somebody kindly raise your hand if you're with me. I can't see you, so I need to make sure. I'll write in the chat room. Okay, Becky is with me, namesake. Yeah, so Jen earns 200,000 on a monthly basis, decides to save 40% on a monthly basis. Sorry, yes, 40%. No, sorry, 20%, not 40. Yeah, which is 40,000. Kindly write for me in the chat, how much money will she have at the end of the year? How much money will she have at the end of the year? Great, 480,000. Perfect. Okay, this piece is with me. I hope you're doing that in Excel. I would like us to take the conversation a bit higher. So the second year, Jen does the same thing. Her salary has been like that. Her salary is like that for 30 years. So 30 years, she's a secretary somewhere. She's worked there for 30 years. And that has been her salary for 30 years. But on year 1, she decides to save 40K per month. Very right. She has 480 by the end of the month. Sorry, by the end of the year. And she does that a second year. But she puts this money away in a bank that says that they'll give her a return on investment of 15% or 15%. How much money will she get on the previous year's savings of 480? Kindly post in the chat room. So she goes to a bank and they promise that they'll give her 15%. 15%. You all know that when they're giving you a return on investment, they look at the closing balance of that financial year. Yes, perfect. Exactly. She gets 72,000. Wow, I like this, Rachel, and this PC. I don't know who that is. So how much money so Jen, thank you very much. Rachel has gone ahead and even added the 480. So what I would like you to add, in year 1, she closes the year with 480K. In year 2, she continues to save 480K, but gets a return on year 1 saving, which is 72,000. So in year 2, how much money does Jen have before she gets a return for year 2? How much money does she have in terms of savings for year 1, savings for year 2, and a return on investment for year 1? How much money does she have? Please then don't get bored with the numbers. I would like us to. There's something I'd like us to get to. Don't get bored with the numbers. So like I'm saying, in year 2, she has year 1 savings, she has year 2 savings, and she has a return on investment for year 1. How much money does Jen have? Thank you very much. Somebody has put it there, rightly so. So at least now we understand the logic. So I'm going to put up the Excel sheet so that you can see what happens to Jen's finances 30 years down the road. And there's something that I'd like you to take away with today. Something very, very interesting called passive income and the magic of compounding, all under savings. It's something that I'd like to Okay, you can see that Excel sheet right there. And you're right when you did that mathematics. This is just a summary, but I would like you to, in your free time, to go through the logic. And there's something I'd like to share with you after 30 years. So we have in column B, we have Jen's salary at 200,000 UGX on a monthly basis. Okay, that's a monthly salary. And column D, let me just hide column C. Let me just hide column C. She gives tithe. So that's her tithe. But in column D, as you can see, she decides to save 20% of her income on a monthly basis, which is 40,000. And yes, indeed, in year one, she has 480. So every single year she has 480, and the return on investment in the first year savings is 72,000, like you said. And indeed, her net worth at that point in time, like you can see, I'll just mark it red, is 1,032,000. That's her net worth. But remember, she lives on a salary of 200,000 per month. The interesting thing about her savings, at the end of 30 years, I would like you to look at this. At the end of 30 years, all her savings, if she didn't do anything to her savings, it would be 14.4 million UGX. But because she decided to subject it to an investment that gives her 15% on an annual basis, what you see in this column, that column F, let me just highlight it yellow. Those are returns on previous year's savings plus the compounded effect. So those are returns on the money that she's saving for the previous years, including the interest for the previous years. And what you see in column G is her net worth. What her net worth means, let me just point it purple, no, blue, a light blue. Let me give it a light blue. And I'll give the fine or passive income where my biggest interest is. I will give it green because color green stands for very many good things. Yeah, I'll call it green. So the yellow is her investment income. And some of you have done the exercise and you've arrived at this 72,000. So you know how to arrive at all the other figures. And her net worth. So her net worth, what this means, that 1,032,000 is simply adding her the previous year's savings plus a return on investment. So you can click anywhere and you ask yourself, how is it that she got to 22 million? Let me just pick 22 million there, right there. I'll just make it bold. She got to 22 million. Why? Because she has savings for all those different years and a return on investment, her return on investment and the interest in the given years. And at that point, her net worth is 22 million. But remember, Jen gets only 200,000 shillings on a monthly basis. This should give us a light bulb. And what I like about the last, let me just talk about the last H, the green, for instance. If Jen decided that, you know what, because we said that finances are simply a logical path, they are algorithms, they simply have inputs and outcomes. So you just have to determine your outcome and then work backwards to see what your inputs will be. So in the H, when she says that, you know what, I want a passive income, at this point, her salary is 200,000, remember? If she says that, I'm really tired of putting my interest back in to compound itself. At this point, I want to remain with a net worth of 22 million, but I want to see what that will pay out. I'm tired of working. Remember here on this, let me look at row 16. I'm tired of working. My salary is still 200,000, right? My salary is still 200,000, but my net worth can get me a return of 15% of 240,000 per month. I'm comfortable with living off 200,000 and saving 40,000. So at this point, she could say, you know what, I just want to stay with a net worth of 22 million that gives me a return of a passive income of 243,000 per month. You might ask, what is passive income? Passive income, in this case for this column, is simply she gets into her investment, her return on investment, which is 2.9 for that period, meaning that her net worth is able to bring her a return on 15% of 2.9. So if she decides to divide that 2.9 into 12 months, on a monthly, she'll be getting 243. But remember, she's still earning 200,000, and this is year 15. So if she decided and said, I'm tired of working because at this point, I want to go to the village and not work for a salary, but work for passion and impact. In year 15, she could quit her workplace. But she decides to save until year 30. Year 30, her salary has not changed. Those times were tough. Her salary did not change. Still saving the same amount of money. Guess what she's getting in interest over her net worth? She's getting 27 million. Her net worth at this point is 208 million. If she decided to divide that 27 million on a monthly basis to take it out as an income, guess what's happening? She has an income of 2.2. Isn't it mind-boggling that a person who's earning 200,000 per month after that timeline of 30 years can actually get a passive income? Passive means that I'm not even doing anything. I'm not worried about my stock getting burnt, my cows getting, like I said, low return, low risk. So she's not even losing her money. The bank has told her, we'll give you 15% annually for the next 30 years. And she's getting 2.2 million on a monthly basis if she decides to stop putting in her interest again and still stay with a net worth of 200 million, which is 200 million now. How, you ask yourself, how did 200,000, 40,000 give birth to 200 million? Because like I said, it's an algorithm, it's logic, and one of the inputs is time. The other input for this investment class is to keep compounding and putting in your interest, so you don't take it out. You keep putting it in and putting it and putting it in. So the respect of time and the respect of savings consistently. One says about the algorithm of saving consistently, an amount over a period of time and a timeline, and you will definitely have a given outcome. So this is what Jen is looking at after 30 years: a passive income of 2.3, a net worth of 208 million. Her salary is still the same. She's still saving 40,000 on a monthly basis for a whole year, but you can decide to play with this Excel and say, you know what, me, I'll save 50,000, I'll save 100, I'll save this for this amount of period. And for me, I'll choose an asset class that probably gives me less risk at 10 with a lower return at 10%. Or you can say, I'll choose an asset class that will give me 50%, 100%, 20%, 25%, and the logic will take you to the same place. Okay. And that's what I was trying to say, that the equation of money, or the way that we look at money, is simply, I'll say it again, an algorithm. So we've seen an example of an investment class. We've seen multiplied savings. We've seen Jen's story and Jen's scenario. And you can apply the same basics or the same equation to your scenario and ask yourself, how did Jen get to a net worth of 200 million over a period of time? Multiplied savings is simply because she chose an asset class, subjected it to a risk and return curve. She leveraged with time, and guess what? She had multiplied savings eventually, and we've seen it together. So let's just go into, very quickly, our time is long spent. We're going into the legacy algorithm. I like to talk about legacy very much because I feel that when I hear that certain countries have put some logic to their economic geography since 1948, and now we are in 2020, it challenges me to say that how can I have the same sort of understanding for my wallet as an individual, for the wallet of my family, for the wallet of the communities that I happen to talk to, and eventually, hopefully, for the nations in which we live. And again, I have a dream that Sub-Saharan Africa at some point in time will, go above the radar and stop being in those balances that we see every time the World Bank publishes these statistics. So one of the areas that I would like us to look at is legacy. The reason why I like legacy very much is because we have seen that I talk about nations because they define the user experience or the citizen's experience in that particular space. We have seen that certain individuals or certain products or certain brands or certain countries have a roadmap for a given period of time. And so that when somebody in 1948 is already dead, but they left a particular brick for somebody in another to come and step onto, they will not struggle as much as the people that left before. And that's why I like to look at, I call it the legacy algorithm. And I'll give you a brief story. Some of you have probably heard it, some of you have not. But I like to repeat it because it challenges me to have my own legacy for myself. And it's about my grandfather. My grandfather was a rich man who knew how to bring money into his wallet, but perhaps not to sustain it. And I remember just before he died, he had a coffee factory in the village. And just before he died, 2 years before he died, he told his children, he had about 60 children, 20 wives. And that defines a lot of our experience in Africa. And he told his wife that, you know what? Sorry, his children, he called them together and said, you know what, guys, I'm probably about to die. But if I die and leave you the assets that I have, you guys will kill each other. So you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to sell one of my key assets and enjoy that money until I die. To cut the long story short, he sold a piece of land in a very lucrative area for 300 million Uganda shillings. That was in 2010, 300,000 million Uganda shillings, close to 100,000 US dollars, perhaps 80,000 US dollars. He sold it and he spent the next 2 years enjoying himself. He got another wife. He renovated his house. He bought a fancy car and he enjoyed his money until the last day that he died in 2012. What does that mean? I say this story because that's a mindset that lots of us have. at a national level, at a household level, at a community level, and then eventually at an individual level. But what that means is that the people that will come after you, they will struggle. They will start from scratch, just like many of us are starting from scratch in terms of defining our well-being, our wellness, of our financial wellness. We're starting from scratch. Why? Because there's no brick that has been left before in terms of skill, in terms of research, in terms of asset. It could be in terms of physical asset. It could be in terms of human stock, in terms of what value did your father or your great-grandfather teach you or leave behind in terms of the research they did in a particular area that your family perhaps excelled at many years before you came in, and now it's at ground zero and you have to start it again from scratch. Why? Because we didn't think in terms of legacy. We didn't think in terms of 100 years, so that the people who come after us, their path to financial wellness is a lot easier. So the basic logic that I came up with in terms of legacy is that we must have a vision. We must have a vision that outlives us. Like your vision and your passion must be something that scares you so much that it's bigger than yourself, that by the time you leave, you've done enough research, you've done enough benchmarks, you've done enough target setting, and you're somewhere, you have moved from point A to point X. The people that will come after you, your children, will start from somewhere. And that is something we're lacking a lot in the African space. We don't like to benchmark, we don't like to research, we don't like to set targets in terms of where we'd like to see ourselves many years down the road. So in terms of input for legacy, we have vision, we have time, we have action, and we have consistency. In terms of outcome, you'll have generational wealth, you'll have legacy. But there's a particular brand that I also like to refer to when I look at legacy. If you look at Colgate, I know that most of you have heard of Colgate. Your parents sent you to the shop and they're asking for toothpaste and they say, you know what, go and buy Colgate. Why? Because the brand is so strong. It stood the test of time. It has gone through so many different generations that people refer to it even when they're referring to a toothpaste. Colgate was started in 1806. I would like to imagine that the shareholders of Colgate, if the shareholders of Colgate are the same shareholders that started it out, the family, many years down the road, I'm sure they don't struggle to access certain amenities and benefits in life. Why? Because whoever started it had a vision that was beyond generations. And the question is, what vision do you have for your family? What vision do you have for yourself when it comes to money? What vision do you have for yourself when it comes to entrepreneurs that want to have a brand? I know that so many people in Hive Collabo are young entrepreneurs and they're looking at this space and asking themselves, how do I benchmark? What vision do you have in terms of impact, in terms of years, in terms of legacy? Because if you define a 100-year vision, trust me, I've tested it with myself. Trust me, the level of input and action that you have for a 100-year vision is so different than when your vision is 5 years, 10 years, 3 years, 2 years down the road when it comes to your finances. Okay, this is another law of money or wellness that I like to think about in my personal life, and I thought that I would share it with you as well. And it's called the home hack. It's called the home hack, or the issue about your home. I know that many times when you start out in a marketplace, you've gotten a job, you've started working. Lots of us, when you think about your own home, you don't think about whether your home has any value or whether your home is increasing in value over time. Sometimes, of course, we start out when you're renting. So what happens when we're renting is that money is literally flying out of our pockets. The way that I like to look at rent, that it's okay to rent as long as where you're renting is bringing you, you're leveraging, it's bringing you some sort of income. When I talk about Malaika Path and where our offices are right now, we don't have any offices, but we list our offices as part of our home. So I know that if Malaika Path brings in a certain value at the end of a given year, at least the home where I'm staying, I could be paying rent, but guess what? It's also the office for my company, my organization, and I'm leveraging in that rent is not just going out, it's bringing me more value. I should challenge myself for it to bring me more value than what I'm paying out in terms of rent. But also you might find that you have your home, perhaps it's good to look at your home in terms of an investment. Why? Because we know the thing about real estate, land is always increasing in value, and it's an asset that's always increasing in value. So there's a saying right there that I picked from one of my favorite books on financial literacy, The Richest Man in Babylon, and it says, make of thy dwelling a profitable investment. Why? By owning your home. So today, if you don't own your home, make sure you target or you work towards owning your home, because your home grows in value and that increases your assets. But if you don't own your home, again, make sure that your home brings in some form of income so you can leverage, on the monthly payouts that are going out, at least bring in some form of income so that you can make of your dwelling a profitable investment. I just thought that I'd share this hack with you because I've come to see that in so many people that have their personal balance sheets in the right place, they have made of their homes a profitable investment. Finally, before we go into before we close our session and before we open up the floor for any questions or deliberations, I would like us to think about the retirement algorithm. We spend 30 years in the marketplace, 30 years or so in the marketplace, maybe 30 to 40, depending on where you live. Some countries' retirement age is 65 years. In Uganda, it's 60. But at 55, you can also retire, depending on the organization where you work. And you spend 30 years. I'll go back to that Excel sheet that I showed you about Jen. What do you want in terms of the way that I'd like us to look at the retirement algorithm is what would you be comfortable with in terms of a monthly payout? That's how we should look at it. What would you be comfortable with in terms of a monthly payout? And then you work backwards to look at what asset class can bring you a return on investment that will give you the monthly payout that you desire. And at this point, I'd like to go back to Jen's scenario. Let's just go back to Jen's scenario because it embodies saving, it embodies investment, it embodies retirement. So if Jen said that at 30 years after 30 years in the marketplace, I'd like to just go home to the village and look at my cows and write my books and read and mentor my grandchildren without actively working, then Jen will have to go back and say, if I'm desiring, for instance, to have a monthly payout, because at that time, maybe my only child would have finished university, and at that time, I'm comfortable living off 500,000 UGX. I think you can all see where I'm targeting. I'm trying to color code it where my cursor is. So if Jen says that I would like to have a monthly payout of 500,000 shillings, I'll be very comfortable because I've known what it's like to live off 200,000 and have been comfortable. So if I want to live off 500,000 on a monthly basis, what does that mean? That means that I need an asset base or an asset class that is worth, I'll color code that again, that is worth 49 million at a rate of 15% annually, 15% annually, which 15% will give me 6 million. You can see that where I'm color coding and where the cursor is moving. So the algorithm or the equation or the law for retirement is simply to work backwards against that logic. Start by saying, what am I comfortable with in terms of my monthly payout? So if Jen says that she's comfortable with a monthly payout of 500,000 shillings, I know that numbers could be boring, but please don't get bored because the money hack involves numbers. If she says that I need 500,000 shillings as a monthly payout comfortably, where I don't have to, be in active employment and I can do what I want and not work for a paycheck. So she'll simply go into her Excel sheet or she'll simply go into the logic of retirement and calculate what asset base at what return on investment will give her a monthly payout of 500,000 shillings comfortably. And then Jen could decide to retire in year 20. But if Jen says, no, I actually have a lot of potential with the logic and the information that I have about financial wellness, and perhaps I could live off 2 million bucks per month because I know what it's like to live off 200,000 per month. So I want to know what it's like to live off 2 million. Guess what? Then Jen will have to grow her asset base. In this logic, will grow her asset base to 200,000. That will give her a return on investment of 15% and then take her to 2.2 on a monthly basis. But you could say, you know what? I think 15% is very low. I trust my instinct. I'm very good with risk and return, and I can subject 49 million to a return of 30%. And in year 20, I can actually retire and get 2 million payout by just manipulating this 49% to give me 100% return, or 50% return, or 25% return, or 35% return. The key point here is that you have to use the logic of working backwards. But the hack is that you look at your monthly payments that will make you comfortable at that point in time. Obviously, you have to take so many things into account: your children, your great-grandchildren. What value are you leaving for them in terms of legacy? Are you investing in them in terms of lifelong learning? If there's no active investment at a national level or at a company level into your lifelong learning, perhaps you'd want to take that into account, or retirement to do that for your children and your great-grandchildren. So you have to put all those things into account and then work out what monthly payment works for me and how do I work backwards to bring an asset base at this particular return on investment that will make sure it gives me what I'll be comfortable with at that point in time. Before I leave the retirement hack or the retirement algorithm, I'd like to tell you a story, a very brief story about somebody that I know personally. And I like stories very much. If you've been in my classes and you've had this story before, please don't get bored. But stories give me perspective and they teach me beyond just the words that I'm listening to. So I know somebody who, on a monthly basis, and I like these amounts because they challenge me to say that if this person gets this amount of money on a monthly basis, how much more can I do if I get much more money than this? So I have a friend of mine who gets 300,000 on a monthly basis in terms of her salary, and she did not subject her savings to what I've shown you. Jen went to the bank, but she decided to put her savings savings and investment into real estate. So this lady owned a piece of land. She already owns a piece of land, and what she has done is that she has told herself, I get 300,000 on a monthly basis. All I want is to make sure I come up with an asset class that gives me 500,000 on a monthly basis. So what she does, she puts up rentals that can fetch 100,000 per month. Right now, she only has one rental that is up, but her dream and desire is to come up with 5 rentals. And she said, you know what? She calls me auntie. She says, auntie, when I eventually have my 5 rentals, I can leave and retire. Why? Because I know that I have an asset class in structure. I have a structure in place where I have 5 rentals. Every rental is giving me 100,000, which is 500,000, which is more than my monthly salary. Right now, I'll be comfortable to leave the workplace and going to, she loves gardening, and going to gardening, so I don't have to work for a pay slip. I don't have to work for a paycheck. I'm simply working for impact, and I can live off this very, very comfortably. So the choice of her asset class is rentals. She has one of them finished so far. She has only 4 to go. She challenges me. Why? Because she's been able to do a lot much more with the amount of money that she's getting. But most importantly is that she understands the logic behind retirement. She understands the logic behind saving. She understands the logic behind investment, asset classes, risk and return. And she has stress tested all those different inputs that will give her a particular outcome. And getting to a place of wellness is simply as logical as A, B, C, leading you to a D. And that's what I had for you today. I know we've had to look at a lot of numbers. We've had to look at GDPs for different countries and all that. But I did that because I wanted you to understand that at a macro level or at the bigger picture, there's actually people enjoying a user experience or citizens experience in different parts of the world because they're intentional about these inputs. They're intentional about these areas in their lives. And I picked out one important thing just to recap, which we can do for ourselves in terms of our value per minute in the marketplace that some of these nations are looking at. Their lifelong learning. Are they being schooled? Are they becoming experts between the ages of 25 to 64? Because they are offering something in the marketplace. So they must offer it at a level of expertise. They must offer it at a level of mastery, depending on whichever field they are in. And then we went on to understand what an algorithm is. And if there's any one takeaway that you'd have out of this session, it's just one thing: an algorithmic mindset or understanding, or looking at financial wellness as simply a logical equation or a logical path where input A will give you output A. Input A plus B will give you output A, B. So we'll open up the floor. Our time is long gone. Thank you so much for keeping with us even beyond the 1 hour. I know Nikolai had so many questions to ask, and the floor is open. Feel free to chat, put up your hand. I think we'll give it to, if you want to put something in the chat room, please do go ahead. And we should be closing in about, I think, 5 minutes. Let me stop sharing. Yes, I can now see the chat. Okay. Any questions, contributions, comments? So we can close our class.
This is Alan.
Yes, Alan.
From Hive Collab. So thank you, Rebecca.
Thank you too.
And everyone from Malaika Path and everybody from around the world who has joined us. So
thank you.
We appreciate your feedback and would like everybody to kind of fill in the feedback form that we've shared in the chat. This would be really helpful for us. Yeah, for Becky, thank you for having this session. We really appreciate the time that you put in to make sure that it happens.
Thank you
and
too.
all the members that were able to join. I know it's really, really tough. Many people have not been able. Actually, Barbara, who is the MD of Hive Collab, could not actually join because of this whole internet thing that's going on.
Sorry about that.
Been access any social media, so it's been really tough. But we really are really excited about changing, you know, the way we think about things, the logic about money, of especially the myth that I'll pray about it and I'll receive a miracle. Oh my God, it's so funny, but it's real. People still believe that, yet it's a daily thing. The other is of us knowing that maybe I can get a handout, or I'll go to Becky and she'll assist me this way, or I can sleep at Becky's house. But that is changing as the world moves on. So really, thank you for teaching us about money and behavior.
Thank you too.
I'll be a different person also after today.
Thank you too very, very much. Yes, Nicolai had some inputs.
Well, thank you very much. Very, very interesting talk. It is second time in this academic year when I joined some African events. In last summer, I joined Toastmasters, Africa Toastmasters. I indeed enjoyed it. Well,
Wow.
It is very interesting, and thank you very much for your content and your lecture.
Thank you, Nicolai.
My only tiny comment, is, well, all your algorithm is fine, very nice, but still in real life, for example, let's consider personal value.
Yes.
For example, you should include also social collaboration that can be very productive and very, let me say, in contrast, it can be very it can have very negative impact.
Yeah.
Especially in poor country and developing countries, where personal relations is much more important value than education, experience, lifelong learning, and so on. Even in my country, it is still a problem. So very nice algorithm in theory, but you should introduce some coefficients in all your formulas. I think so. So please, for educational purposes, nice.
Yeah.
But for real life, unfortunately, you should use some factors. Well, or some additional addends or something like this.
Thank you, Nicolai. I'll just delve into what you have said. Maybe just a comment on just to understand you even better. When you talk about social relationships, what we have seen, and somebody from the floor can help me. What we have seen is that in this part of the world, we use relationships to get what we want, but that doesn't necessarily translate into the value we're offering in the marketplace. For example, you'll find that there's some organizations where somebody will hire someone because they know them, and yet they're not good at the job. And that affects the value they're offering in that particular part of the marketplace. And that's why we're looking at things that are straightforward, because we're in a world where it's global. We can no longer say that, oh, my father will hire me, my sister will hire me. But even if they do, they should hire you because of your expertise, not because they know you. So indeed, personal relationships will take you a certain mile, but you should be able to be a master in your field so that you're actually fetching the value in terms of income that you're giving out. But thanks for the contribution. I'll definitely look that up and read more about it. Thank you.
Just methodological issue. Next time when you will make presentation, please convert first to PDF. Zoom has no conflicts with PDF.
Okay, that's noted. It will make the session smoother.
Right,
I'll surely do that. Yeah.
Because several times when you switch from
I had to go out.
screen demonstration and then back, it is not good.
That's very true. It affects the flow. That's very true. Thank you so much for your contribution. That's taken into account. We'll surely think about that next time. Okay, thank you, everybody. I would like to check out and say thank you for attending. Thank you for being a part of this class in spite of the hurdles that everyone faced to get into class today. Like we said, a lot of people are not on social media, but we shall post this on our pages, on Hive Collabo pages. And Malaika Path does have a blog post coming out tomorrow to further commemorate the World Logic Day. So please look out for it and read it. It's on the fun side of life, but still looking at logic in the social area. Like Nicolai has said, we looked at logic in the social aspect of our lives in terms of relationships. So look out for that post and do enjoy reading it. Otherwise, thank you very much. And take a minute to do that. To take that survey in the link. Your feedback is very important to us. Thank you very much and have a beautiful, wonderful day. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye. Thanks, Becky.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.